At 4:06 a.m., I was jolted awake by the screech of a doorbell and the shrill voice of a woman demanding that I move my own car off my own driveway. Why? Because her brunch guests deserved convenience. And apparently my Jeep was in the way of their royal chariots. She didn't get her way, so Karen did what Karens do best. She called 911, and that's when things started spiraling towards sweet, delicious justice. I'd gone to bed around midnight after a late night of tinkering with my Jeep, my pride and joy, parked right where it belongs, on my private driveway, 18 feet from the curb, not blocking a soul. At 4:06 a.m., the doorbell blares like a fire alarm. I stumble out of bed in a pair of old sweatpants and open the door to find Karen, robe, curlers and all, standing on my porch with a flashlight like she's performing a citizen's inspection. "Jacob, you need to move your vehicle. My guests are arriving at 6 and they need space." I blinked, thinking maybe she'd hit her head on a HOA bylaw. "Karen, it's 4 in the morning." "Yes, and I've asked nicely. If you don't move that thing, I will call the police." Let me repeat that. She wanted me to move my car off my own driveway for her guests 2 hours before they were even scheduled to arrive. Apparently, my driveway was the most aesthetically accessible place for them to park, because her own 3-car garage was currently being used for storage and decorative arrangements. I did what any sane person would do. I shut the door. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights bounce off my bedroom window. I peek out, and there she is, standing with 2 officers, arms flailing like she's describing a hostage situation. I step outside, calm and barefoot, and one of the officers gives me a look like, "We're sorry we have to be here." "Sir, your neighbor called in a disturbance. Something about your mom and her property rights?" I pointed at my driveway. "That's my property. My car is on my property. I'm not moving it so her mimosa mob can roll in with comfort." They nod. Karen starts sputtering something about HOA rights, communal expectations, and a duty to uphold neighborhood harmony. The officers ask her plainly, "Ma'am, are you alleging a crime?" "Well, no, but..." "Then this is a civil matter, and he's within his rights." And just like that, she deflated. But she didn't walk away quietly. By 9 a.m., an official HOA violation notice was taped to my mailbox. Inconsiderate use of private space impacting community experience. $75 fine. That's when I realized something deeper was going on. This wasn't just about a brunch. It was about control. I started digging. Turns out Karen had been rewriting small clauses in our HOA rules under vague language like temporary parking flexibility and shared guest access. Most people never read the board minutes, but I did. And not just because I'm petty, I'm also a licensed real estate attorney. Yeah, surprise. What Karen didn't know was that I'd been quietly collecting evidence, every text, email, voicemail, HOA bulletin she tampered with. This driveway stunt? That was her last warning shot. And I was ready to return fire, with facts, law, and a surprise motion at the next HOA board meeting that would make her brunch look like a lemonade stand. So here's what Karen didn't know. I've lived in this neighborhood for 17 years. I've served 2 terms as HOA vice president, and I'm also, this is where the plot thickens, a licensed real estate attorney specializing in property disputes. While she was measuring grass blades and handing out passive-aggressive bulletins about aesthetic cohesion, I was quietly collecting receipts, emails, meeting notes, recorded calls, screenshots of her pushing secret revisions into HOA bylaws that no one voted on, like her sneaky guest access parking flexibility clause. She'd even tried to add a policy about driveway availability for overflow purposes, but left out a pretty important detail. It was never formally ratified. I dug up every bylaw change from the last 12 months. Half of them. Illegitimate, never passed quorum, never publicly disclosed, just added into the handbook she printed at Kinko's and handed out like it was the Constitution. And now she was fining residents based on rules that had no legal standing. That $70 fine on my mailbox, it was about to backfire, big time. The next HOA board meeting was that Thursday. Normally 6 people show up, half of them sipping decaf and talking about potlucks. But this time I invited everyone. All the retirees Karen had fined for their flower beds, the single dad she cited for a non-regulation basketball hoop, and the couple who got slapped with a violation for leaving their Halloween decorations up past November 2nd. We packed that room, standing room only. Karen strutted in with her usual clipboard, smiled like she was the queen of order, and began her little speech about neighborhood unity and personal responsibility. And then I raised my hand. Point of order, I said. Before we continue, I'd like to review some irregularities in our HOA amendment process. She blinked, smiled tighter. This is not the time for legal grandstanding, Jacob. Actually, per HOA Article 4.2, any resident may raise a procedural objection at the beginning of a scheduled meeting. She froze. She knew the clause, but she also knew she'd been sloppy. I pulled out a stack of documents, copies for every board member, showing HOA rule changes that were never voted on fake ballots, where she filled in names of neighbors who had moved out, her signature appearing twice on board approval forms where she'd forged a quorum, an email where she told a neighbor, "I don't need to wait for approval on this one." People started murmuring. One of the board members, sweet old Bill from Lot 23, leaned forward and said, "Karen, is this true?" She launched into a word salad of legal-sounding fluff about discretionary application of procedural authority. But the room wasn't buying it, especially when I played a voicemail she left for another neighbor, bragging that she could bend the rules a bit if someone donated to her landscaping beautification project, which, for the record, was just a new koi pond in her front yard. Once the murmurs turned into full-on muttering, I pulled out my trump card. Based on these irregularities, I'm filing a motion to suspend all current enforcement actions issued by Karen over the past 6 months, pending formal audit and legal review. Karen's jaw dropped. She tried to interrupt, but now the board had turned. "Seconded," said Lisa, a board member who'd once been fined by Karen for hanging wind chimes. "All in favor?" 5 hands went up, including Bill's. Motion passed. Just like that, every violation Karen had written was frozen. The $70 fines? Voided. And Karen? Oh, she wasn't suspended yet. But the board voted to strip her of her sole authority over rule enforcement pending review. Now here's where things get real interesting. 2 days later, I got an envelope in my mailbox. Not from the HOA, from a law firm. Karen had lawyered up. She was filing a cease and desist against me for defamation, character attacks, and get this, malicious interference with community governance. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off my porch swing. Because, spoiler alert, her lawyer, not only was he not a specialist in HOA law, he was also her nephew, fresh out of online law school and not even licensed in our state. I responded formally, citing the anti-SLAPP statute, which protects people from lawsuits designed to silence public criticism. Attached to my reply were all the documents, emails, recordings, and a transcript of the board meeting. 3 days later, her case was dropped. Silently, embarrassingly. She didn't even have the decency to admit it publicly, just stopped talking about it like it never happened. By the next HOA meeting, things had shifted. Residents were emboldened. People who had been quiet were now asking questions. Karen, meanwhile, sat in the corner of the community center room like she was hoping to melt into the carpet. The board held a formal vote to restructure enforcement authority, requiring all future violations to be voted on by at least 3 board members, documented with photographic evidence, include a clear reference to the bylaw being enforced. Then came the final blow, a petition circulated, quietly, respectfully, legally, to recall Karen from her position on the board. We needed signatures from 2/3 of the households. We got them in 5 days. The recall vote passed 42-3. Karen resigned the next morning. Her koi pond got filled in. HOA funds were reallocated to patch sidewalks and repaint the community sign. And my Jeep, still sitting in my driveway, right where it belongs. About 3 weeks after Karen's glorious downfall, I got a knock at the door. It was a city code enforcement officer in a yellow vest and a very apologetic look on his face. "Sir, we've had a complaint about possible zoning violations on your property. Specifically, an unregistered vehicle, an illegal carport addition, and improper drainage." Now, let me paint the picture. The unregistered vehicle. My Jeep, fully registered and plated, parked on my concrete driveway. The carport? A temporary pop-up shade I use when I'm working on the engine, fully removable and well within city guidelines. The drainage issue? a downspout extension Karen had complained about 3 years ago that had already been approved and signed off. So I walked the inspector around, showed him everything, printed out documentation, even pulled up the city's own records of past inspections. He nodded, took notes, and finally said, "Yeah, this looks like a targeted complaint. You're in full compliance. Sorry for the hassle." But before he left, I asked, "By the way, does the complaint list who submitted it?" He flipped his clipboard, smirked. "You didn't hear it from me, but it came from someone on Maple Drive, property number 108. Karen's address." Of course, now here's where it gets juicy. See, Karen thought she could weaponize the city against me. But what she didn't know was that a complaint to the city triggers a full property audit on the complainant's home too. And I happen to know a guy, Tony, who worked in the city zoning office. We go way back. Poker nights, softball league, you get the idea. I casually asked him, "Hey, hypothetically, if someone at 108 Maple Drive had installed a koi pond without a permit and added a pergola that's about 2 feet too close to the property line, what would happen?" He raised an eyebrow. "Hypothetically? That's a red tag. Minimum. Possibly fines." And wouldn't you know it, Karen's koi pond was installed 6 months ago with a full plumbing hookup, water features, and lights. No permits, no inspections. That pergola, built last fall by a friend who wasn't licensed, attached to her home's foundation, and not even on the original plans submitted when she moved in. She had built over the setback line, city code violation, no wiggle room. So I asked Tony, what would happen if someone, say, submitted photos and parcel records showing the violations? He grinned. Well, then the city would be required to act. No favoritism, no drama, just code enforcement. I didn't have to do much. Just took a walk one afternoon, snapped a few photos of Karen's yard, wide shots, date stamped, geotagged. Then I submitted an anonymous complaint through the city's online portal. No drama, no confrontation, just a quiet click of a mouse. 10 days later, Karen got a visit from code enforcement. The same inspector, actually, the one she'd sent to my house. Only this time he wasn't smiling. They found a koi pond with underground plumbing, violating utility easements. Electrical lines run without permits. A pergola 3 feet into the setback zone. Landscaping that diverted stormwater into a neighboring yard. She got red tagged on the spot. That means stop work order, potential fines, possible teardown. In the city, they don't negotiate when plumbing's involved. Once the red tag went up, Karen went nuclear. She stormed into the HOA meeting that week, not as a board member, just as a resident, and accused a certain neighbor of waging a campaign of harassment. I just sat in the back row, sip out my coffee, let her rant, until the board president finally cut her off and said, "Karen, you filed the first complaint. If there's anyone to blame for the audit, it's yourself." Boom, mic drop, but it gets worse for her. The city issued a $2,500 fine for the illegal pond. Another $1,200 for the pergola. She had to hire a contractor to remove both, which cost her more than $6,000. And just to top it off, the drainage work she needed required a certified plumber who had to tear up her rose bushes and part of her walkway to access the pipe she'd buried illegally under the garden gnome display. It started with a postcard, glossy, full color, with a badly photoshopped image of Karen smiling in front of City Hall like she was declaring independence. Karen M. For City Council. Restoring order, rebuilding trust, respecting tradition. She mailed it to every house in a 5-mile radius, including mine, of course. She listed her credentials: experienced HOA board member, neighborhood improvement advocate, fighter for property rights. The irony? She'd been kicked off the HOA board, fined thousands, and reported for zoning violations. But Karen had one thing going for her. She knew how to talk like a politician, sound confident, blame vague, offer zero real solutions. And just like that, she was on the ballot. Now, normally I'd let things slide. I'm not a political guy. I mow my lawn, mind my business, and enjoy my retirement in peace. But Karen made a mistake. She started smearing other candidates. At a public candidate forum, hosted at the local high school gym, Karen got up and called her opponent, Susan Taylor, a retired school principal and absolute sweetheart, a reckless spender who had no understanding of how rules should be enforced. She even brought up problematic elements in our neighborhood and threw subtle jabs at yours truly without naming names, though everyone knew exactly who she meant. He's saying, and that's when I decided, if she wants to bring the past into the public eye, let's bring all of it. I dusted off my old laptop and opened the folder labeled Karen Hoa Drama Master. Yes, I had a folder. Don't judge me. Inside were meeting minutes where she forged approval signatures, HOA emails threatening elderly residents with fines, her fake rule amendments with no record of vote, photos of her backyard violations, the red tag notice from the city, her niece's cease and desist letter, unsigned, unfiled, and hilarious. I printed everything. Clean, organized, labeled by date. Then I walked into the city council candidates' open Q&A forum, where Karen was due to speak, and handed a copy to every local reporter sitting in the press row. Karen stepped up to the mic with the confidence of a woman who'd never been held accountable a day in her life. She launched into her usual routine. We've lost sight of community standards. I've spent years improving our neighborhoods, making them safer, more orderly, and more beautiful. The moderator asked a softball question about zoning reform, and Karen, clearly feeling untouchable, name-dropped my address. There are homeowners in this very town who flaunt public rules. They challenge the enforcement process. It's dangerous, the crowd murmured. Then a reporter from the Herald Tribune stood up and asked, Karen, can you speak to the multiple city code violations you received last spring? Specifically the unpermitted koi pond and the unauthorized pergola that encroached on a utility easement? Karen blinked. That was a misunderstanding. The city later clarified. Actually, the reporter said, flipping through the dossier, we confirmed with city code enforcement that you were fined $3,700 and ordered to remove both structures, and that you filed a retaliatory complaint against a neighbor the week before your audit. Silence. Karen turned beet red. Then another reporter chimed in. Is it true that during your time on the HOA board, you implemented rule changes without proper voting procedures or resident approval? Karen stammered something about board discretion, but it was over. You could feel it in the room. Even the moderator leaned away from her like she was radioactive. By the end of that forum, the audience was no longer smiling. They were whispering. 2 people left early. The next morning, the Herald Tribune ran a story titled, Council Candidates HOA History Raises Legal Questions. It included everything. Quotes from neighbors, photos, red tag records, even a snippet of the cease and desist letter, which had laughably confused zoning code with traffic law. Karen's campaign went from rising star to political cautionary tale overnight. Donors pulled out. Signs disappeared from lawns. Her Facebook page turned off commenting, then went offline completely. And on election day, she got 11 votes out of nearly 3,000. I assume at least 3 of those were her family. It's been quiet since then. Karen still lives at 108 Maple Drive, but the koi pond is gone. The pergola's been replaced with a patio umbrella, and the clipboard, retired, permanently. She avoids eye contact at HOA events now, never speaks at meetings. I think she finally realized people weren't mad because she wanted rules. They were mad because she thought she was above them. The rest of us? We got a new HOA board, more balanced, more fair. Susan Taylor won her council seat and sent a handwritten thank you note to every resident. And my Jeep, still parked in the same spot, now with a fresh coat of wax and a bumper sticker that says, "Ask me about HOA drama." It started small. Karen began showing up to HOA meetings again, not with demands, but with suggestions. She wore pastel now. Ditch the harsh bun for a gentle bob. No more barking, just concerned citizen energy. I think we could brighten up the cul-de-sac with a few planters. Wouldn't it be lovely if the entrance sign had some lavender? I've been in touch with the City Beautification Committee. And that was the twist. Turns out, the city had launched a small beautification grant program, up to $5,000 for local landscaping improvements in residential areas. All you had to do was submit a plan, get HOA support, and show that the improvements would be publicly visible and well-maintained. So, of course, Karen took that grant and ran with it like she was designing Versailles. Karen submitted a plan that looked simple on paper. Replace dead grass near the Maple Drive entrance sign with drought-tolerant flowers. Add 2 raised flower beds near the community mailbox. Plant native trees along the sidewalk. We voted it through with minimal fuss. It sounded reasonable. But what Karen didn't include in her proposal was that she also planned to build a 15-foot rock path lined with solar lights on common HOA land. Add a fountain, yes, another fountain. Install decorative signage with her own name engraved as project lead. And, I kid you not, name the whole thing the Karen M. Memorial Garden Walk. Except it wasn't a memorial, because she was still very much alive and still very much annoying. The second that city check cleared, Karen went into full production mode. No permits, no inspections, no communication. She hired some teenager with a pickup truck and a wheelbarrow to start digging. Ordered decorative boulders from a landscaping company in the next county over. Had wood for the flower beds delivered at 6:15 in the morning. Thanks for the wake-up call, Karen. Yeah, worse, she started laying down pea gravel and paving stones on the sidewalk strip right over a municipal utility easement. City code? Totally violated. Neighbors were tripping on uneven stones. One woman nearly broke her ankle trying to get her mail. The mailbox area started smelling weird because Karen decided herbs would be nice and planted rosemary, basil, and mint, which rotted under poor drainage. The lavender she insisted on turned out to be Spanish broom, which triggered severe allergies for one of the residents. And when someone gently mentioned it in the HOA meeting, Karen said, if they have allergies, they should take Claritin. This is about beauty, not personal sensitivities. Classic Karen. The final straw? The sign. She had a custom wooden sign carved with the words, the Karen M. Garden Walk, designed with love. She installed it herself in front of the entrance sign, blocking the neighborhood name. It didn't take long. Someone filed an anonymous complaint with the city. Spoiler, it was me. Again. Code enforcement showed up. This time they were ready. They discovered unauthorized construction on public land, use of grant funds outside of approved scope, improper plant selection near utility access points, unlicensed electrical wiring for the solar lights. Boom, red tagged, again. The city revoked the remainder of the grant. Karen was ordered to remove all non-approved installations within 10 business days, or face fines of $250 per day. Watching the city dig up her legacy garden was oddly poetic. One by one, the solar lights came out. The sign was yanked. The rocks were loaded into a dump truck. Karen stood on her porch, arms folded, watching her dream fade away like the mulch she never replaced. Residents quietly applauded. Some brought lawn chairs. There were rumors someone brought popcorn. And guess what happened next? At the next HOA meeting, we passed a new motion. All future beautification projects must be pre-approved by majority vote, include written permits, and exclude the personal names of any resident. We didn't name her, but we didn't have to. Nowadays, Maple Drive is peaceful again. The grass is green, the fountain is gone, the entrance sign visible. Karen still lives here, quieter than before. No more signs, no more flyers, no more pastel presentations. And me, I still park my Jeep in the same spot, still drink my coffee on the porch, still keep a folder labeled Karen Final, Really Final, just in case. Because with Karen, you never know what's coming next. It started with a flyer, not from the HOA, not from the city, just a plain white sheet of paper stuffed into every mailbox on Maple Drive, titled Winter Decor Guidelines for a More Harmonious Community Aesthetic. Sounds innocent, right? Wait till you hear what was inside. Karen's guidelines included no decorations before December 10th, all lights must be white or warm yellow, no inflatables over 3 feet tall, no music, motion lights, or animated displays. All decor must be removed by January 2nd at noon. She even added a warning at the bottom. Non-compliance may be noted and addressed by HOA observation teams. HOA observation teams. Lady, this isn't Homeland Security. It's cul-de-sac Christmas. To make matters worse, she went door to door, wearing a Santa hat no less, to gently remind people of the guidelines. My neighbor Paul, a Vietnam vet and proud grandpa of 6, had just finished putting up his classic display. 3 reindeer, 2 candy canes, and 1 life-size inflatable Santa on a Harley. Karen walked right up to his porch and said, "Paul, I love your enthusiasm, but the guidelines suggest something a little more subdued." Paul just looked at her and said, "Karen, I once watched a man defuse a landmine with a spoon. You think I'm afraid of your clipboard?" By December 5th, Karen had filed 6 decor-related complaints to the HOA. The HOA board, bless them, tossed them out faster than expired eggnog. So what did the neighborhood do? We doubled down. Paul added a second Santa, this time on a sleigh with flaming exhaust pipes. The Wilsons across the street lit their entire roof with red and green strobes. Even Mildred from Lot 11, who hadn't decorated in 12 years, put up a full nativity scene with animatronic wise men. And me? I bought 3 giant inflatable snowmen, 2 light-up candy cane arches, and synced it all to play Trans-Siberian Orchestra every night at 7 p.m. The block became a holiday war zone, and it was glorious. You guessed it. Karen called the city again, claiming light pollution, noise violations, and even, this is real, seasonal intimidation. A city official came out, took one look at the lights, chuckled and said, "Ma'am, this is a residential street in December, not a military installation. You're free to submit a formal complaint, but I don't think you'll get far." Karen stomped off, but she wasn't done. She tried to bring back the infamous HOA fine system, proposing a new motion that anyone who exceeded a reasonable level of decor should be charged a usage fee for shared neighborhood atmosphere. Nobody seconded it. She sat down in silence, lips pursed tighter than a roll of wrapping paper in July. Then someone had an idea. I won't say it was me, but it was definitely me. We decided to go big. On December 23rd, we hosted the first annual Maple Drive Holiday Light Show. Flyers, hot cocoa, our donation jar for the local animal shelter. We had music, cookies, a kid's costume parade, and one neighbor even dressed up as Karen, complete with a fake clipboard and a shirt that said, HOA equals Holiday Overachiever Association. Over 150 people showed up. Cars lined the street. The local paper did a write-up titled, "When the HOA Grinch tried to steal Christmas, the neighborhood lit up instead." Karen didn't come out of her house once that night. Blinds closed. Porch dark. The only house on the block without a single light. After the holidays, Karen tried to push for a formal decorum committee at the January HOA meeting. She got voted down, unanimously. We ended up passing a new resolution instead. All seasonal decorations are encouraged and celebrated within city code and common sense. That resolution, named in honor of Paul, the Santa on a Harley clause. And just like that, Karen's war on Christmas ended, not with fines or clipboards or city forms, but with more lights, louder music, and a whole lot more community than she ever expected. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a Karen try to ruin the holidays in your neighborhood? Tell me your craziest HOA holiday drama in the comments. Was there a Christmas decoration war? Did someone try to ban inflatables? Drop your stories below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're loving the saga. Because trust me, if you think this was wild, wait till you hear what Karen tried to do with 4th of July fireworks. Yup, she actually tried to get sparklers declared a community safety hazard.